is Tea with Botha.
Once again, join us as we traverse these difficult, uncomfortable conversations. Today, I would like you to help me welcome Reverend Joe Mdlela, but then you will know much about him as he tells us who he is, where he comes from, because I find him interesting. He is a former trade unionist. He's a columnist. He's a priest. Soon to be a lawyer, LLB with UNISA. I think he'll tell us more. But what fascinates me, he talks about things that in the church there must be a trade union. Can you think about it? I mean, these are people who are supposed to go to heaven, but suddenly you must have a trade union. I wonder, what is this all about? When I read this from him, I was shocked. But let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Brother Joe, welcome.
Peter.
And thank you, Brother.
No, sharp.
Yeah. Tell me, Brother Joe. Brother Joe.
Brother Joe is a outie from Natal Spread, Katlehong, if you like.
Yeah.
You know? That's where he was born. And he was born to parents who were not necessarily educated, but who encouraged us to go to school, because they were saying to us, without the necessary tools which we get from education, we will struggle. And of course, we heeded the call by them, and so we were loyal to what they were telling us, and so we went to school. I went to school in Katlehong, primary school. I went to a school called Togoza, Mondes Primary School, and then I went to secondary school in Vosloorus, Ilinge High School, and then I proceeded then to be interested in matters of theology and philosophy.
That's before journalism.
That is before journalism.
So, what mfundisi?
Yes.
What made you? What happened, Brother Joe?
Well, I was a server, growing up as a server in the Anglican Church. In Katlehong.
Okay.
But firstly, Catholic Church. Started off there. My parents are Catholics, but I had this, on this one occasion, Desmond Tutu came to Katlehong. He was going to a parish there in Katlehong. And we were told that Desmond is in town, Desmond Tutu. And as young servers, we thought to ourselves, my goodness, we can't miss that opportunity. We're banking our Catholic Church. We're going to the Anglican Church. And it was a revelation for us, because he was not your traditional priest who would tell you about heaven and earth. He would be very practical and tell you that we needed to create our heaven on earth. That's where it's got to be created. And what did that mean? It meant quite a lot of things. One of the things that it meant was that we should have justice. If you have justice, if you treat others with love, if you are kind to others, if you are able to negotiate yourself out of difficult waters, raging storms, and so on, in many ways, that is to create your heaven on earth, and that is where we want to create heaven, and that is where we live, and because we live there, we must create that heaven on earth. It's pointless wanting to create heaven after life. What would be the benefits of that? So yeah, and I would say that it is Desmond Tutu who gave me a new understanding of what the church ought to be doing in this world.
And you moved. You decided then and there to go. To jettison Roman Catholicism.
Yes, and became and became Anglican.
Became Anglican.
Yes.
From there?
From there, and studied in the UK.
Why did you choose?
Well, I was offered a scholarship
Mm.
to study. I mean, I was a curious person. I wanted to know. I was really interested in theology because for many years the Bible did not mean much to me. Even as I was listening to people, I mean, the story of Adam in the Garden of
Eden, the snake talking.
All of those things, you know, because I was a curious student.
Yeah.
And I was not sure if I'm following.
Whether it's making sense.
Yes, it just didn't make sense. But I was fortunate to have gone to a seminary.
And where was that?
This was in the 80s.
Where was that? Where was the seminary you went to?
Or this was in England. It's a College of the Resurrection. College of the Resurrection. It's an Anglo-Catholic seminary in north of England. And there, my political consciousness was, I think, tempered with, because you would have expect this holy, because I was staying with nuns, I was staying with monks, you know, and you would expect these people to be holy and to be
blameless,
blemishless, and so forth, to be people who didn't care about the world. But clearly, the message was that we need to care for our world. And I remember one monk who wrote a book, which is titled "Everyday God."
Everyday God.
That we witness God every day. You've invited me to your studio today. And what's the end purpose of this conversation? Is to enlighten others. Is to give to others a perspective that I share, that you share. Give them that perspective so that they understand that their viewpoints, important as those viewpoints are, there are other viewpoints which might not necessarily coincide with yours. And there must be an ability to look at those viewpoints that you don't share yourself and ask questions. Why is embracing those viewpoints as opposed to the viewpoints that I embrace? And there must be a good reason for that. It's simply because we are different and our worldview is different and we see things differently. And our ideologies, political perhaps, there's nothing wrong if I belong to a particular political organization or formation that you don't like. It's because I'm driven by something else. That something else is not driving you. It drives me to be where I want to be. And so there must be a lot of tolerance. And I see that tolerance is lacking in our political space, you know. And if you look at a guy such as our EFF leader, Julius Malema, for instance, and the way he treats others. I mean, these are political adversaries. They're not your enemies. They're just they think differently. They do politics differently. And so they need to be treated with respect, accepting that their viewpoints is different to your own viewpoint, you know, and accepting that it's not a wrong thing to have a different viewpoints, you know. It doesn't matter what other people might want to say, you know, that maybe you are in the wrong party, and that's what you believe in.
So you're saying that I mean your belief system was what would I be correct to characterize it as revolutionary?
Very much so.
How so?
And I mean, let me just give you an example. And we would go to a pub with this wearing our cassocks. I mean, in
Abafundis.
Yes, yeah. Wearing, and nobody would look over. to say, what are these people doing wearing their cassocks?
Into a pub.
In a pub, and would order beers, wine, whatever you want.
Nabo monks and nabo
Monks,
nun.
and they would be dancing there. There would be all kind of things, normal things that are done by normal human beings. And here you've got to be holier than thou, you know. And
You can't do that in Katlehong.
no, I mean,
You can't do that in Stanton. Eh?
people will walk away from your church and say, "My goodness, what kind of priest is this?" You know, that's the one thing. But the other thing, the Gospels. I'm fascinated by the Gospels. The 4 Gospels, they just fascinate me. And I ask myself many a times, did these people who wrote these Gospels, did they meet Jesus? Because they talk about Jesus in almost every line. It's Jesus talking. You know, they are reporting on Jesus. I mean, if you look at the Gospel of one of the better Gospel of John, it's a Gospel created by people, written by people of Ephesus, and they're having the understanding of who this Jesus was. Most of them, I mean, for instance, the Gospel of John was written in 17 CE, after Christ, after the birth of Christ, you know, AD, if you like, you know, Anno Domini. But they were writing about the person they've never met. But the stories were all over the place that there was this man called Jesus, who was a revolutionary, who wanted change, who was persecuted by others because of his belief. This is a guy who formed a movement, Jesus movement, it was called. And that movement was saying that we are Palestinians. We are suffering from oppression. And there are these guys who come from Rome, who, I mean, many of those countries in Palestine, I mean, many of the cities, many of the provinces are named after Roman cities and Roman, they're given Roman names. And Jesus was looking at this coin and saying, who is in this coin? It's somebody who does not live in this country of mine. It's somebody from Rome. And I don't take delight in being controlled by somebody outside of my gassy, if you like. You know? And all of those things added to his crucifixion. And people said, well, you're a terrorist. And you're not supposed to be doing all of those things. But even to this day, we still remember Jesus. He lived some 20,000 years or so. But it was because of his stance against injustice, against people who were bent on oppressing others, taking their land, imperialism, and all those kind of things.
Is it the reason why, Rev Joe, you are so vociferous about corruption in the present Anglican Church?
Yes.
Are you motivated by his teachings? You write and talk more when Rev Joe about, love affairs, the priest taking the wife of the former priest who is, the ex-wife. You talk about this embezzlement of funds. You talk about every day you write in your Facebook, Rev Joe, that look, there is the Anglican Church. You're saying that it's rotten to the core, and you give an impression that the Archbishop Mahoba is not doing anything. Could I be? Tell us. I mean, you talk about the malfeasance in the church. That look, there is one priest you without fail you name him by name. That this guy is a problem. That's when you even went as far as saying that the church must be unionized. With the history of unions in this country. I mean, one of my executive producers, who Andy, were talking just before this. I mean, I'm actually shocked that this you're talking about this thing, you're writing about. Tell us about this thing.
Well, trade unionism is feared by, and it should not be feared. Trade unionism helps us to regulate our lives, to ensure that there's justice in our world. I mean, you have the rich people, those who own the wealth of this country or any other countries, but you have other people, the working class, and the working class must be protected from exploitation by the capitalists. And those capitalists, more often than not, are heartless, because they would want to have profits, and after profits, and ignore the suffering of the people they employ, of the people who make sure that they make those profits. Those people, which would be your working class, are not benefiting anything from it. And so,
but there's the church. You're saying the church is also that
the church,
the Anglican church in particular.
Let me tell you, the church in England,
Mm.
the priests there are unionized, are organized. An injury to one is an injury to every other priest. And Anglican stems from England. And when in South Africa and other parts of the world, we are told that we cannot be unionized, then we should worry. Because
why should we worry about it? Because these are earthly things. I mean, these are earthly things. We're going to heaven, forget about these things.
We can't do that. This is a world. This is where we live, and that this is where we're going to die. There's no other world besides the one that we are inhabiting. This is the only world. After death, we know where we're going to. We're going to the gravesite. We're going to be buried there. And it's the end of the story.
So are you heaven?
Well, let's put it this way. Heaven must be created on earth. There's an expression, a Latin expression, vox populi, vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. And what is the voice of God? The voice of God, the living God, is that we should have justice in the world, that we should be good to one another, that we should share the wealth of the country. And people who are demanding that land must be returned to African people are not making a mistake. And all of those things referred to as goodness are a representation of God. So
we should have our heaven here.
We should have our heaven here, because when we move out of this world, it's the end of us. There's no other life. I mean, biologically, it would make no sense. And of course, religion cannot deviate from science. Religion must be informed by science. And that is why we learn philosophy, so that we can reason properly, we can argue properly.
Hey, that would excite my producer, Mdlela, is a student of philosophy.
Yes, and we've got to think properly. We've got to think nicely. We've got to accept that people in this world will have different perspectives, different views, will belong to different political parties. Of course, in South Africa, we do things differently. We have so many political parties, and most of the ideologies are almost similar. And so I think there's no point in having.
So, but why do you make these allegations about men of God, men of the cloth? Why do you say that these people are corrupt?
Yes.
Why do you say? Are you not afraid that you are in fact? These are God's chosen people, just like you. These are priests. We believe. When I was raised to believe that you are a representative of God. But you're saying that there's malfeasance, there's corruption, there is this infidelity. There are a lot of things in the church. Are you not afraid that you are in fact doing the opposite of what you are called to do?
When I say, when we say we are representative of God as priests, we're right. In other words, the equivalence of that is that we are representatives of goodness, because God is good. God is not corrupt. And where we see corruption, it might be in the church, it might be committed by bishops. We must call it what it is. And we must blow the whistle and say, hey, you're dealing with a corrupt bishop. You're dealing with a corrupt priest.
You're not afraid you'll be excommunicated?
Well, why should I be afraid when I'm seeking justice for the church and seeking justice for the people of God? And now, remember, if you chow the money, the church's money, you are chowing. You're not chowing. You chow people's money. People with good hearts make a contribution. The money that we get in the church should help communities, poor communities, bursaries, schools, their families. It should not go for
Poverty
alleviation and all those kind of things. It's in a small way we can make that contribution. We cannot always expect the government to do that. We can do it because we get money. But if those monies end in our pockets, then something is wrong with the church. And these are the issues that are always, and they bother me, those issues. And of course, you could say I'm almost excommunicated from the church. I mean, they've spelled it out that why do you think that man is a priest? He's no priest. He's a communist. He's something else, you know.
Who says this about you?
Well,
other bishops?
Other bishops. And for, as a matter of, they took my license. So that I should not preside over any.
So you're no more. Are you still, or you're?
No. I'm with the people. I still say mass every Sunday. I say mass every Sunday, and when I left, when I said, "Well, guys, I'm no longer allowed to practice what I was trained for," and they said, "No, Zamba now." And so we have a little structure, but I don't want to call it give it a name. We're still Anglicans. We say mass the way mass ought to be said every Sunday. I still visit people who are sick. I still go to hospital. I still bury people who are dying and so forth. And we still raise funds to ensure that poverty is alleviated and so on. And we're doing what God has called us to do, to be kind and to be good to others, you know. And
Archbishop Makgoba, where's his voice in all of this?
Well, we tend to say to Archbishop, there are problems in different dioceses. And I'll be quite specific. This is a specific diocese.
The Highveld.
The Highveld. It's a specific. It has not been the case all the time. But once we had this new bishop, I'm not going to mention his name, things changed. And he came with a philosophy that I will deal with this with lawyers. I'm going to fire people. You don't do that in God's church. You don't do that. You resolve problems by sitting down and discussing those problems, because by definition, problems, people cannot escape living in a world that is problematic. It's impossible to do that. We have problems of varying degrees, you know, and varying forms, you know, of problems. Many problems. We've had a Jacob Zuma, for instance, whom Thabo Mbeki described as a counter-revolutionary. And in your sermons, in your homilies, this is something that you need to talk about. And as you read your gospel must also be speaking to the realities that we experience as priests and as God's children, because we're God's children. And we know what happened to our country for the past 9 years during Zuma's reign. We know what happened. We know there's under commission. And the church can't be blind to those kind of realities. The church must speak up and say, yes, we align ourselves with Zuma, not with the commission, the Zondo Commission. We align ourselves with that, and we want corruption to stop in this country, because corruption denies millions and millions of good life, of justice and so on. So we have to speak up. The church must speak up. It is God's habitation, the church on earth, where goodness is expressed by us.
Is the church still relevant?
The church must be relevant. Of course, we have the Hong Kong churches, all over the place.
You say the Hong Kong churches, but you also have the fighting churches.
Yes,
which you come from. You speak strongly about not Hong Kong but fighting church.
Yes, yes, and when the church, the people must rise up against injustice, and by definition, they must. If the church,
so it's still relevant, the church. How so?
The church must be relevant, and
is it relevant?
These days it isn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
These days it isn't.
Why are you saying?
And because of all the wrong things that are happening in the church in the name of God. My situation and other people's situation, where people are denied the right to practice their craft, if you like, to practice being priest. Mm. And somebody says, well, I'm going to revoke your license.
I'm going to ostracize you.
I'm going to ostracize you. What are the gospel saying? You remember the gospel when Jesus was talking to his friends, and these Pharisees, and they were pointing at this woman with, yeah, they were saying that.
Yeah.
And
is that when he says, let he who among you is sinless be the first one?
Those are the teaching of Christ, that we must try to understand the problem. And once upon a time, I think some 5-6 years ago, we went with Archbishop Ndongonkulu. We went to KZN, and we're having this commission to understand poverty. Why poverty? And there was a lady, I can never forget that. There was a lady who was HIV positive, who attended that Mbizo, if you like. And this lady says, he comes forward and he says, this is my situation. I have to get ARVs. I have to get them regularly. But this would require that I have a meal. So where do I get a meal? I'm unemployed. It's President Peter Marisbeck, I think it was. I'm unemployed and I don't have the funds. So what do I do? What do I do? I prostitute myself.
I can't take this on an empty stomach.
I need to get some bucks.
Yeah.
So I have to prostitute myself.
This is she's saying this.
Yes.
I've got to sell my body.
I've got to sell so that I can have funds to buy food, so that I can ingest these tablets. Yes. Quite courageous of her to be saying those kind of things. But what is society going to say? Where he comes from? He's going to be regarded as what? As rubbish, as not belonging to the communities, when we should be listening to her and wanting to understand why is he saying these things? Why is he so honest and saying, well, I have to sell my body in order to get money?
Being realistic.
Yes, and being realistic. And of course, he gets ostracized by his church. The church gets to know about that and say,
Because you are dirty.
yes, because you are dirty. And this is the church
That's supposed to be caring,
that's supposed to be caring.
loving.
Yes, loving and so on. That is the church that discriminates, that stigmatize people and so forth. And so, if the church is relevant, it must be attending to these matters, socio-economic challenges that are facing Black people in the main, and very few other nationalities like white people and others, experience this kind of things. We have a democracy, and yet Black people continue to be suffering. And so the church must be visible. But what does the church do? It continues to do the things it should not be doing.
Do you think if Desmond Tutu, may his soul rest in peace, was still alive, this would not be happening in your church?
He's turning in his grave right away when he sees what is happening in our churches today. When he sees his Anglican church, which is so loved, in the main, and I have to underscore this, not all Anglican dioceses have this
The
kind
Highveld is the one
the
with
Highveld is the one that must be
we don't have
fingered.
to not pray for it.
Yeah, we have to pray for it.
Yeah.
We have to pray for
And
it.
pray for the bishop.
Yes, but we have to speak about these things.
That's right. That's where the trade union comes in.
Yes, the trade union must be there to defend, or rather to give strength to those who may not have the power. Because you have these imbalances, you have those who have power and maintaining the status quo, and those who seek to be rescued from the powerful. And those who seek to be rescued from the powerful must have an agency that is going to kind of help them.
That's right. That's your justification for the trade union
Yes,
in the church.
in the church.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about that. And
we should not shy away from it.
And the trade union must be approaching that, because church workers are church workers. We're part of the working class.
They should have the human rights. Does not mean that because I'm in the church I forfeit.
Yes.
Suddenly I don't have those.
Suddenly I don't have that.
Practically speaking, look, when you say the church must have trade union, the people must organize. How do you do that practically in the church? One, if you are a shop steward there's a shop floor, but how do you do it practically? Who is the shop steward and who? How does that? Your thought, how do you say it? We are good. No, I'm going to my church. I'm a shop steward.
Yes.
What's a trade union called? It's workers that are Anglican. What do you call it?
Yes.
Tell me how to practically.
Well, the first thing to recognize is that there's evil in the world. That's the first thing. There's evil in the world. We move from that premise that there's evil in the world. And if we accept that there's evil in the world, we have to also accept that it's possible for bishops, for church workers to be evil. Those in the hierarchy, it's possible for them to be evil. And indeed, we've had reports of bad leaders in the church. The stories of children being raped in the Val. You know that story. In the name of God, children get raped by respected people who are now, we won't mention their names, but they are in some political parties. We know them. We won't mention their name, but this is a church. Now, but the point about trade unionism is that the ordinary people must be protected from the mighty
but how do you do it?
Leaders.
How do you do it?
All what you need to do is to organize the church people and to say that we are vulnerable. And then we have meetings to talk about our difficulties. And it makes it possible for the priest to speak up, because they know that they're speaking from a shop floor of all workers with common needs and common wants. And one of the needs is that they should be, their dignity as workers, in this instance as priests, as deacons, should be respected. Yes. And then you have organizers who organize. You bring trade unions themselves to come and talk to the people.
Yeah. Mobilize,
galvanize. Tell the people what's the value of belonging to a trade union. It protects you against tyranny,
against evil,
which is
in the church.
It's to their benefit. And of course, for that, there's a little fee that you have to pay for the people, to go around.
So there would be satu, there would be numsa.
Yes, there would be all kind of things.
Nihau in the church.
There would be all kind of things, and it's a novel idea, and I'm certain that many people would say, Mdlela is just dreaming, but it's a reality in the UK. It is there. The Anglican are organized. The priests there are organized. You can't touch them. You can't touch them. And it's precisely what is happening in England can be replicated here in this country.
Okay, there's nothing no.
No, and
that's workable. That's practical.
And the Constitution is on our side. The Constitution, it says we can organize. You know that.
I do.
We can organize as people. We've got to remove the myth that church people or church workers are not workers. And in many canons in the church, they regard us as not workers, as people called by God.
And that's where exploitation comes in.
That's where exploitation comes. We are called by God, of course. But what is God? We have to define this thing called God.
How do you define this thing called God?
This thing called God, it's all about goodness, what we do. I mean, you go to some countries. I mean, I have been to Switzerland. If perchance you lose your bag or your money, your purse or whatever, you know what's going to happen? You'll find it tomorrow. You'll go to the place where you think you lost it, and somebody would have picked it up and taken it to a place of safety. Why is that the case? It's because most people have money, have wealth. And if you have wealth, you don't bother about the 200 rand you pick up.
So you need to improve the socio-economic.
You need to improve the socio-economic condition of people here, so that we don't have the kind of evil, which is crime, which is malfeasance, which is, why are we so silent that Jacob Zuma wants to be a president? Why are we so silent? Why?
Yeah, but what's wrong? He was once a president. What is wrong?
Knowing what we know today, knowing that he sought to collapse this country, knowing what we know, and people should at least think a little bit, to think, why do I need a Zuma today?
I'm not sure whether, besides, look at the 2024 elections. I'm not sure whether your theory holds water, because, he has beaten, his party has beaten well-established parties.
No,
it is him only, singularly, alone, who reduced the ANC's majority to 40. Why would people want to think that? Why would people support? He is the only Rev Joe Mdlela who dealt a blow to the African National Congress hegemony.
No, that's true. That's true.
Those millions, you can't, Rev Joe, with clear conscience and say, they're bad.
No, it's true. I accept that. Think of what Mbeki was saying the other day when he was removed in Polokwane.
You mean 2007?
Yes, when he was removed from power. Think what Mbeki is saying today. He's saying that, they were saying, President Thabo Mbeki is not friendly enough to people. And
he's aloof.
He's aloof.
He's an intellectual.
And he would not allow me to take just a little bit out of the coffers. He wouldn't. But by implication, someone, him, Zuma, will allow that because he's kind and he warms up to people.
He's accessible.
He's accessible. But you look the outcome of it, because he would allow corruption to thrive. We know for a fact that the tribal card in KZN plays a role. We know that. It's been scientifically proved. We're not guessing. We're not second guessing that. It's true that Zuma represents the royal tribal authority, and that's why the ANC lost so dismally. And what percentage did they get? Less than 20%. From what? From 54, 55%. It's a huge loss.
No, we are good.
So the point I'm making is that if the popularity of Jacob Zuma goes with the fact that it will encourage corruption, then we should be concerned.
You and I agreed that I could enjoy heaven. Are you saying that they're lying to us about heaven?
Well, they're not. It's a language of.
Abastusel.
It's a language of.
Baratsusa. Baratsusa ka heaven. You're going to bed. You're going to hell.
You see,
there's chosen in it.
You see, the priest didn't explain this properly.
Yeah.
And you remember the Pope was saying that not so long ago that they're sorry. Jesus will not be coming. Of course, they understand that Jesus is dead.
Yeah. Which bishop was it?
No, the Pope.
The Pope, okay.
Yes.
What's that?
Recently, not so long ago.
The present Pope.
Yes, that's this whole notion that
second coming of Christ.
Second coming of Christ.
Aigo.
Now, I've rejected that long time ago. Long time ago, I've rejected that.
As an inquisitive student. Yeah.
Yes, and I said it's not going to happen.
Doesn't make sense.
It's impossible.
Biology.
Militates against that thinking. It should never. That thinking is
doesn't make sense.
It's out of order. It's unscientific, and we should not. But there is an explanation for that concept.
What is the explanation?
The explanation is that heaven. It's like the Garden of Eden. It's where there's tranquility, where there's peace, where there's justice. When we talk about heaven, we're talking about all those concepts of goodness. That it must be created. The Lord's Prayer. What does it say? Umbuso
wakho mawuze
emhlabeni. It must happen here. We must have lots of you guys, good people on earth, and then we'll begin to enjoy our heaven. And essentially, our heaven is here. Heaven is not going to be obtained after life.
So that's what you are fighting for. As we speak now within the Anglican Church, yes. That you are saying that, look, these wrongs must be corrected.
The wrong must be corrected.
Bishop, we must create heaven here.
We must create heaven for other people. We must not use law to dislodge others.
And oppress people.
And use the canons to oppress people. We must be open to a conversation with those we think are wrong. We should bring them into the fold and talk to them and say to them, what is your difficulties? Let's talk about your challenges. I'll tell you this, for 8 years, I have been writing to the bishop of the Highfield, the current guy. For 8 years, I must have written maybe 30, 40 letters, notes to him, never responded to any of them. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about the character of that person? What does it tell you?
And he's supposed to represent God.
He's supposed to represent, he thinks I'm just a fool who just write. No response, no acknowledgement, nothing. I mean, even if he thinks he believes that I'm on the wrong, he still have to talk to me.
And persuade you.
Yeah, and persuade me otherwise, So those are kind of evils that you see in the church of God. And people have made that church to be hell on earth.
I hope you have enjoyed this session, this episode. I hope you are keen to understand this malfeasance we're talking about. I hope you have been empowered to understand that this heaven is here. You have been empowered to know that the psychosocial conditions of people must be improved here. We must have our Garden of Eden here. That we must ensure that people of God who are the body of Christ, they are in fact looked after, and looked after well. That what Brother Joe is saying, I hope you are understanding that these are things that we must debate, we must talk about, we must not shy away. But by the way, they are not comfortable. By the way, these discussions, suddenly you wake up, you have been taught and told that you are going to heaven. We are Zuluin. Suddenly someone says that there's no heaven, heaven should be here. That must actually shock you like it has done to me. I hope you will continue to like us and to subscribe to our channel, and make sure that not only this, but you also give us your views. You engage with us. Thank you for being part of this invigorating, interesting episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bacho.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you, Bacho.
Yeah.
And we can now enjoy our tea now.
This is Tea with Botha.